More of the truth has been revealed. The Luke Hughes saga continues to drag on as GM Tom Fitzgerald wants a deal done and he speaks out on his star defenseman. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to Devil's Digest. I'm your host, Ryan the Goose Gosiker, here with you, bringing you the latest, greatest Devils content as per usual. Before we get into the program, I want you to be a subscriber to the channel. We need your help. 60.8% of you are not subscribed to the channel that are normal watchers and listeners to the program. So we want you to hit that subscribe button, help us reach our goal of 1,000 by opening night. Okay, we need your help, and we want you to be a subscriber so you get all the latest, greatest Devils content right at your fingertips. You get notified when we go live, stuff like that, and not even necessarily go live when we post videos, and that way you get all the access to the news and rumors surrounding the Devils. Now, let's get into the program. Luke Hughes, Tom Fitzgerald. This feels like an old Texas Western standoff right now as we're sitting here and, you know, Luke wants 5, so him and Jack could be free agents at the same time. Tom wants either 3 or 8. You know, either a bridge deal or locked in long term. So this is really starting to get interesting and to see kind of how this all works itself out. Now, GM Tom Fitzgerald did speak recently on the subject, and there's a full interview, which if you would like, you should try and go listen to. But certainly there's, you know, some bits and pieces of it. Okay, and you know, basically he's saying eventually this will get done. 11th hour in training camp, probably. Okay, and it's one of those things that as a fan you really don't want to hear, and it's kind of frustrating. Okay, if you're sitting there and you want a deal done, and you know, it's just get it done. Like I don't think, you know, fans aren't really intrigued by this whole like, well, this is the business of it and this is how it's done. Like, no, this is stupid. Like, this is a bad way of doing business and a bad way of sending a message to everybody else. Get the deal done, okay, and let's move on. Because even in this article, GM Tom Fitzgerald, you see it at the bottom. You know, the Devils are hoping to avoid another holdout, such as the one they sold last year with Dawson Mercer. And he goes on to talk about it. You know, the Devils forward only missed 1 day of training camp. Fitzgerald admitted the single absence was enough to slow down the trajectory of the former first-round pick season. I call complete baloney on that. I cannot fathom that. If you're going to say missing 1 absence had him playing catch-up, I still don't know if I believe it. But to say it slowed down the trajectory of his season is just, it's hogwash. I don't buy that. Okay, that's another, you know, bad apple GM Tom Fitzgerald is trying to feed us, and he certainly fed us some bad ones in the past. Okay, however, the sentiment of wanting to avoid something like that, you know, again, I don't know. I think he's serious. I think it's hyperbole. Okay, what he says about Dawson Mercer's season last year. However, certainly it's something they need to avoid. They need to work on. They need to continue to roll because Luke was a very important player on this team last year. Just looking at some of his numbers from last season, okay, 37 assists, 7 goals, which obviously isn't a ton, but you're not expecting your defenseman to score 40 goals, okay? He really came on in the second half of the season. He was excellent down the stretch, okay? So you're looking for that Luke Hughes. If you get that Luke Hughes, I think a lot of fans are much more willing to pay the price and to give the extra years, as opposed to if you're going to get the Luke Hughes that was there for 3/4 of the season leading up to that moment. So it's kind of interesting to see what we're going to get out of Luke Hughes. But clearly, if you listen to GM Tom Fitzgerald, which I know a lot of you don't, a lot of you put headphones on when that guy talks. If you listen to him, if he misses 1 day of training camp, it's going to screw up the entire trajectory of his season. And I like, it's incredible to me, you know. So it's, you know, just looking at it as we continue to roll through, you know, and it does weigh on the agent and the player as well, as if Fitzgerald's saying here at the bottom. At the end of the day, when the only leverage the player has at this point in their career is holding out, that stinks. I don't think anybody wins, quite honestly, when that happens. No, and you know who loses the most? The fans. At the end of the day, that's who loses the most, because it's a distraction. It's a media circus, okay? And maybe not so much in hockey as it is in other sports, because, I'm a big football guy. Any holdout is really a big story, okay? I think a player of this caliber, it would become a bigger story. So if you're the Devils, I know technically you have all the leverage, but why would you not want to get this media circus over with? That'd be my big question. Like, why do you want this circus going into your season, in a huge season, by the way, for the franchise? A massive season for this core, for the franchise, for GM Tom Fitzgerald. I think there's a lot of sentiment around the league that if he misses the playoffs again this year, I know they made it last year, they squeaked in, okay, but if they miss it this year, is it worth keeping the guy around? I don't think so. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. Just taking a look at Luke Hughes, this was his contract last year. Okay, obviously pennies compared to what he's going to be making. And then I just did a Google search real quick on some of the contracts that are comparable, okay, long-term extensions following their entry-level contracts. Okay, if you just look at some of these guys, listen, the price tag is pretty hot, right? I mean, these are not cheap contracts by any stretch of the imagination, and these are ones that Luke Hughes could be in line with. Certainly, if you're a Devil fan, I want you to comment on this video. What is your preference on length of contract? Would you go 3, 5, or 8 years? Basically, I would consider 7 years the same as 8 years. So if you think 7, you're basically saying 8. Okay, so would you prefer a 3-year contract, a 5-year contract, or an 8-year contract? So I think that's a great question. And you look at some of these contracts and some of these guys, and there's some guys that are in Luke Hughes' draft class, stuff like that. So again, there's no perfect, this is exactly what Luke should be getting paid. But this is at least a little bit of insight into, some of the guys that have been in that draft class and, kind of who have gotten paid. So Luke is next. So we'll see what he ends up getting. But it's going to be interesting. And again, if I'm the Devils, I want this thing over as soon as possible. Okay. And, I don't like this whole I don't get done 11th hour training camp. Like, that's nonsense. Get it done now. Get it done. All right, so we'll see as this continues to go on. Obviously, if anything else breaks, we will let you know, and we'll be right back with a video. So I implore you to comment on the video. What is your preferred length of contract with Luke? 3, 5, or 8? Okay, and as always, be a subscriber to the channel so you can receive all the news, rumors, updates that you possibly can. We need to get to 1,000 by opening night, and we need your help. So I appreciate everybody that listens, that watches this, and however you're consuming the content, we appreciate you here at Devil's Digest, and we'll catch you next time on Devil's Digest.